Euthanasia's up. Just in California, we euthanized 100,000 dogs last year in the shelters.
Right.
And the shelters, they can euthanize, right? We don't euthanize. We don't go, oh, we have too many dogs, let's euthanize them. We're never going to do that.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. And it's been a long time since you've heard from us. But PJ and I kind of wanted to discuss the impact of COVID, especially, year and a half, 2 years post-COVID and how it's affected us. PJ, why don't you just kind of outline our experience? And then I kind of want to talk about an article that I read that disputes what we experienced. I found very, very interesting.
What's interesting to me is the actual COVID years, I'd say 2021, things weren't that bad because everybody was home. So more people were volunteering, more people were fostering. People were generous. I mean, because we were worried about donations and events and campaigns and things like that. When March 2020 came and everything shut down, it was kind of scary because we're like, how are we going to raise money? And we pivoted, which everyone knows I hate that word, but we pivoted. We did virtual adoption events, which, helped. We did our telethons. But so those years to me weren't that bad. Once everything opened up in 2022 or started to really open, that's when it got bad because everybody wanted to travel. They were going back in the office. They couldn't foster, didn't want to foster, didn't have time to volunteer, So those things, and then people were not donating. And it wasn't just to us. Donations have been down to all nonprofits over the last 2.5, 3 years. So that's when it really got bad. And it's the same time as when not that we got a lot of, funding or help during the pandemic, but that's when all of any government programs, assistance programs that were available, they're all gone. So that to me is when it got really bad. And that's why we're in crisis right now. So hopefully that paints the picture that you wanted.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was my experience. And, we really don't have anything to point to besides, post-pandemic causing all our woes. Like you said, running out of government funding, people want to travel more. We did see a slight uptick on dogs that were returned. And again, we've always been pretty consistent with right around 10% return rate when dogs, the adoption goes south. The reason why I want to talk about that first is because Hill's, the dog food company, they actually put out a report. They did a 6-month study that refutes our conclusion. And I found that very interesting. They didn't really talk about what areas they didn't really talk about the areas that they covered in the United States. In other words, they didn't discuss if this was an experience all throughout all 50 states or just, Midwest, whatever. Again, I really, really, strongly disagree with their findings that COVID had absolutely nothing to do with adoptions being decreased, dogs getting returned. They didn't offer any explanation, though they did mention that the numbers did go south. But again, if they're going to say it wasn't COVID, they need to offer something else up. No, I mean, I would bet everything that COVID did play a part in this. It's been very frustrating. Like you said, adoptions are way down. I mean, we used to easily average 30 to 35 adoptions a month, and we're barely at 5 a month now. And that's basically, what's killing us as well. And again, it's not just us. It's county, state, shelters, other organizations, other 501c3s, C3s that, rescue dogs. So, I mean, again, I'm going to be repetitive. If you're going to say it's not COVID, then tell me what the hell it was,
Yeah. And I agree with you. I disagree because both qualitatively and quantitatively, I can tell you that's not true. Qualitatively. So we worked in the past with some rural rescues, for one in Blackfoot, Idaho, right? And they didn't have a lot of dogs. And so if we weren't getting play, like say on German Shepherds, right? We would send them some dogs and they would get them adopted to really good families. Since everything opened up and we had so many dogs, I've asked, and she's like, "Oh, I've got dogs coming out of my ears." Okay, so that's a quality, and it's not just her. I've talked to other people, other rescues, like you said. Everybody is trying their hardest to adopt dogs because we want to rescue more dogs, and they're just not leaving. Right? They're just not getting adopted. And the problem is that maybe as many dogs are getting adopted, but there's so much inventory right now, right?
Right.
Consistently, we had close to 200 dogs in our rescue for a couple of years. Now, last like 18 months, we've had over 100, like 120 dogs. We're down to 92. I'm excited we're under 100, but I
Right.
mean, I'd like to be a lot further south. And that means we can't rescue any dogs, right? We can't.
Right.
So it's really hard, even though we have a lot of supporters and it's great. But so, and then quantitatively, we're part of the Coalition for Shelters Animals Count. And euthanasia's up everywhere. And I mentioned
Right.
that, with Christine, just in California, we euthanized 100,000 dogs last year in the shelters.
Right.
And the shelters, they can euthanize, right? We don't euthanize. We don't go, we have too many dogs, let's euthanize them. We're never
Right.
going to do that. So I think, that's a benefit to them. Plus, the shelters did close down during the pandemic, right? So you couldn't surrender
Right.
your dog if you wanted to. If you found a dog, you couldn't bring it to the shelter. So those are the things I think that, really compounded that. And there's a lot of criticism that came out of that because a lot of dogs, they would somebody would find a dog, take it to the shelter. They say, no, we can't take it. Go take it back where you found it. And the dog would get hit
Right.
or killed or hurt, whatever. So, so I think that, and that's a problem that the rescues pick up the slack, right? Even though the shelters are financed by the government, whether it's county, city, state, they do get money. We don't, but we're picking up the slack,
Right.
trying to like help the problem. So yeah, I think that's I haven't read that article, but I think they're wrong. I think everybody is tired of the gloom and doom, and it has been gloom and doom for a while. And now we're in crisis. So it's even more doom and gloom. And I think people just want it to be a better story, to be more positive. And I don't know how you make it more positive when you're euthanizing 100,000 dogs in the shelters. And they're not bad dogs. They're not, sick dogs. They're healthy dogs. They're puppies because there's nobody who will foster or adopt, right? I think that
Right.
it is a crisis. But, I want to go back, so I want you to talk maybe about how we kind of, our innovation or how we adapted or pivoted, whatever you want to say, during the pandemic. Because I think we did a lot of things that were new and people did copy eventually. But, do you want to talk about like maybe the virtual adoption events or whatever?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a success story during the pandemic. Obviously it was very valuable. And I know for sure we were at the time the only rescue that was doing it, in the first part of the pandemic. As we went through the panic and people getting sick, and later on, other rescues were, doing it. Some doing a better job than we did. I don't think very, very many did a better job than we did. And I don't know, maybe, we hung on to that too long because, I mean, obviously we're still kind of doing it and it's not nearly as successful now. But again, we can attribute that to all adoptions are down. The other thing too, that I kind of wanted to mention that's kind of a sidebar, is even though I haven't mathematically tracked it, I know that we have seen a huge increase on families that want to, rehome their dog here in Southern California. I mean, right now it's 12:30 Pacific time on Thursday. And I've already received 15 requests to rehome dogs. And I have no idea how to cut that down. But anyway, getting back to your question, I think for sure, and that was, your idea about doing these virtual events. I think that saved our ass during the time for sure. But it's not doing anything for us right now.
We do have some people who still watch. I know your mom still watches, which is nice. But I do still have people who like say, "Oh, I saw the dog on the virtual event," which is good. But you're right. We used to have it used to be a really big deal. A lot of rescues went back to in-person events, which we did not because we decided to open up a facility, or I decided to open a facility, thinking that would be a way again to pivot to generate revenue. Which has had its own challenges, for sure. And again, part of the problem is we had a lot of dogs, not any money, which, is never a good way to start a business. But yeah, I mean, do you want to talk about the facility a little bit? I mean, because I am proud of our facility. We have done a lot with it. Obviously, I expected it to be a lot more successful by this point. But I mean, maybe you want to chat about that because you do run that day to day and you're there.
Well, I mean, one thing that I am proud of is when I'm not going to lie, I mean, when you drive up, it doesn't look like much. But the one thing that we are doing very well is we ensure that every dog there gets out at least twice a day, every day, even on Christmas, even if it's raining, they get out for a walk, a nice walk, a proper, walk the way dogs should all be walked. No one else is doing that. Even the doggy daycare spas, they don't do that. Um, it's so good for the dogs, their behavior. They start to learn who's in charge. And that's one thing that we do very, very well. Also, the other thing I can take pride in is when we do receive a dog that's coming from another shelter, county, or city, and it's all banged up, it looks horrible. If you see that dog 2 weeks, later after we receive it, that dog looks a lot healthier. The skin, the coat, the dog's demeanor is so much better. And a big chunk of that I can attribute to how well Justine takes care of the dogs physically, but also, again, the dogs get out, they get exercise and worked. And that just mentally does so much for them. As far as aesthetically, I wish, we had a way of making the facility look better to the human, because again, the dogs don't care. But a lot of this, you're selling the human, because almost every owner kind of thinks that their dog is a human in a fur coat, which we know it's not, but we do have to sell to the human as well. However, a lot of savvy owners understand what we're trying to do. And the other thing too, that we were both proud of is 33% of the dogs that come to our facility for doggy daycare or boarding were kicked out of other facilities because of lack of knowledge. And we're so proud of that. I could give you, I don't want to bore anyone right now, but there's so many stories. People come over and they just got kicked out and they're desperate. And we're like, no, you don't even need to show up to make sure your dog is fine. There's no testing because we know what we're doing. And, most places don't.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think that I am proud of it as well. But I think that's the thing that people don't understand. That's our secret sauce. Yes, there are a number of boarding, daycare, facilities. Some offer training, but we have 13 years of experience of saving, rehabbing over 6,000 animals and getting them adopted. And there's nobody that touches that. So I really like our for-profit and nonprofit kind of combination, the way we do it. I personally thought, like I said, not that we're stupid, but I personally thought we would get funding for the for-profit side, because of all of that, because of our experience, because we have traction, because we have, a tight community. But I think, that's been very eye-opening for me in the last 18 months that, we're not tech. We don't have AI.
No, I was going to say, if you're not an AI company.
No, we're
if you're not an AI
mortar,
company, you're not getting money.
Right. Brick and mortar business that needs money. And it does have a philanthropic piece to it, which,
right.
And so if I had $1 for every time somebody would tell me, oh, well, everybody loves dogs, you'll have no trouble raising money. Well, that's not true. I do believe it's still, it's a recession-proof industry. I think that, if we did have if we ever do get funding, we can make it very successful. We've got the art and the science going for us. But I think what we've done is we have really helped a lot of people. To your point, we've helped a lot of dogs, and unfortunately, where we're at, there's a lot of homeless population. But I know we're even helping those people with food, supplies, often training if they can't afford it. So I think we're trying to still give back, but it's getting harder and harder every day because, again, we don't have funding. We're not subsidized by the government. The people in our community give. They're so generous, but, they can only give so much, right? Because the cost of things are so high. So, but I agree with you. Having a place where a dog with intense behavior can come and be safe and get walked and have playtime and have human time. And it doesn't matter because we're not throwing them into a room with like 20 other dogs. I think that's very important.
Yeah. And it means so much to the families. Someone came in just 2 days ago and said, this is the first time in 3 years, we didn't have to worry about the dog, being boarded, and they were able to board the dog. So, that's, I love that. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, not enough people know about that yet, about that we bring that to the table. But and then we also get a little heat from people, going to Disneyland because we're here in Anaheim, and people are having a hard time finding a place for their dogs. I find it interesting that they travel with their dogs. It's kind of sweet, but anyway, yeah, I think you've covered all the problems. Now, one thing I did want to mention that you sent me that article about the 25 top philanthropists. Was it in the world, the United States?
You know what?
Not
I think
one
it wasn't. I think it was the U.S.
Was the U.S. Yeah, the top 25, and not one of the top 25 gave $1 to any animal-related nonprofit. I found that very, very interesting.
It's
I mean,
disheartening,
again,
for sure.
yeah,
I
I mean, I'm sure I'm sure, of course, they gave it to great causes. Of
they
course they
did.
did. There's so many, but I found it amazing that not $1 was given to any type of animal. It
Yeah.
didn't have to be dogs, but not
No,
any
that's
animal.
true.
Amazing.
That's
Amazing.
it's funny because it's 25 top billionaire philanthropists, right? So these people
Yeah,
are
I'm
worth
sorry. Yeah,
25 billion,
yeah,
30
billionaires.
billion,
Yeah,
50
yeah,
billion, 100 billion.
right,
Not one
right,
penny.
right,
And your point is valid. I mean, if they're giving it to cancer research or children's cancer
Sure,
or education
absolutely need it.
or diversity or trying to, women who are, in domestic violence, it's all
Right.
very worthy causes, but it's disheartening because, we, the animal nonprofits, are not getting a dime, and
Right.
it's so hard
Right.
right now. I mean, it's always been hard.
Right.
I'm still absolutely fucking proud of the work that we have done in the last 13 years. I mean, if we close the doors tomorrow, which, may happen, I'm still proud of what we did. I think we've made a difference, at least in 6,000 dogs that we've saved, and the families, and then other people that we've helped with spay and neuter clinics and other things. But man, it's hard, and it is a little disheartening that, as I'm saying, when people go, "Oh, everybody loves dogs," well, yeah, but not everybody is going to donate to dogs, and that's the rub right there. So, and I'm very proud of our facility, but it's taken a toll on us financially, mentally and physically, and I'm not sure if I see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is tough, again, because we have poured our heart and souls into it. One thing I am very, very, very proud of and very humbled by are the people that work with us, right? We do have a few employees. You mentioned Justine. We have other people that, they're working there. They work very hard. We have a lot of people who still come and volunteer, almost every day, and walk dogs. And it's hard. It's hard when it's 100 degrees outside and you're walking dogs. It's hard when it's raining. It's hard when it's cold. Yeah. But they still show up. And that, to me, I mean, I never believe that I'm worthy enough to have somebody do that. And I know they're doing it for the dogs, but still, it benefits us. And I think that's a really an awesome thing that kind of come out of it.
I mean, even the awesome soul that's helping us produce this now, Sam, I don't think he doesn't hate dogs, but dogs aren't his favorite thing, but he does this for free all the time and is very sweet about it. I mean, there's so many people that give indirectly and directly, and you're 100% right. It always amazes me. One thing too that I've really learned about human nature that I guess we always kind of know, 90% of the volunteers, are the caretakers. In other words, the females. If 100 men show up to volunteer one time, I will never see them again in Anaheim. If 100 women show up in Anaheim, I'll see at least 75% of them again. I mean, it's that. I mean, men I don't know what, they can't handle it.
It's hard. It's a hard job.
Well, but we're wired weird. We're kind of wired weird. It's kind of like, even if it's someone that we love, we have a hard time going to the hospital to see them. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know why we can't get over the hump. Women, and so many women that volunteer in Anaheim, they don't just do it. They love doing it.
Yeah. Like Lori's there all the time.
Yeah, Lori, Debbie. I mean, there's so many great people. Hopefully they're listening.
Lynn and Steven.
Yeah, Len and Steve. Yeah, well, Steve probably does it because his wife makes him, but I do find it fascinating. No, I know. But I do find it fascinating that it's just another example, I guess, where men suck. I don't know.
Let's not go down that path. Just kind of like about to wrap it up. I just want to.
I can hear Nigel complaining outside.
Yes, yeah. Nigel's ever complaining. So
Yeah.
what do you want to leave this episode with? Like, is there some hope?
It's not that haven't lost hope. I guess I'm still even more frustrated that so many families give up on their dog because they just don't want to take the time to learn why it's not working. They always want to blame the dog. And we've been crying that for years. If I could find a better way to get people to understand, this, when you raise a dog, it's not intuitive, and you have to try to educate yourself a little bit, know what you're getting into, so it will be more successful. Even with the fosters, we sometimes have trouble explaining to them, to get across to them, this is going to be very hard, and I can count probably on one hand how many fosters, really listened and really tried super hard to make it, work. And almost 90% of those end up adopting that dog.
That's true.
So you end up losing the foster,
Yeah. I think there's hope. I think that I think we do play a critical role in supporting both, the dogs, obviously, because we rescue dogs, but people. If we get out of our financial crisis, I would love to do more spay and neuter clinics, do more education. I think that's the thing. I think, there are a lot of things that we would always like to do, but we're always in, crisis mode. So I think there's hope. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty, but I also think that we've made a difference to a lot of people. I mean, Christy and I were talking about Chloe, the family who had to give her up for like 6 months because they were homeless. And,
Right.
I feel very proud of that. And I want to do more of that. And hopefully we can. So I think there's hope, but, without funding, that is, and I know it's not like a broken record, but it's just not, we're not going to get out of it. So hopefully we will. I know we're well respected even in the rescue community because I know that we rescue a lot of animals and help a lot of people. And I want to continue that. So
Sure.
Yes, it'd be great if people listen, but at the end of the day, whether we lose the foster or people really try and it's just not the right fit, that's okay. It's just that if they're trying, and I think that's all we can do is keep trying.
Yeah. All right, everybody go get Nigel.
Okay.
All right, bye everybody. Thank you.
Bye everybody. Thanks for listening to For the Love of Dog.